Kate Mila-Falcha, welcome to Irish Granny Helen, and welcome back, by popular demand, to my guest, Sara Jordan-Heintz. Welcome back, Sara. Thank you for doing this. Sara is an author, and we've covered a couple of her books. The first one we did was Dorothy Kilgallen, and if you haven't seen that, I think I made a playlist of your stuff, or I should have. I'm pretty sure I did. And then also this book on old Hollywood stars from the Midwest, which we're going to kind of talk about peripherally, although I have to confess, when I told you I was hunting for my notes, and I thought, oh, well, what if I look at the book, I can figure out roughly when I covered Barbara Stanwyck, only to discover she's not in here.
No.
So here we are, well prepared. Me anyway. So thanks for doing this.
Absolutely.
What we thought we'd talk about today was pre-code Hollywood and what the code was all about, and then Barbara Stanwyck, who sort of straddled both time. Well, she was involved for a very long time, but she was familiar with the time period before the code and was affected by the changes. And you know, if anybody has seen the video I made with Deborah Lupien, who, you know, does the Akashic Records, and we talked to Barbara Stanwyck, she didn't have a very high opinion of code. So that was pretty fun. So Sara, why don't you tell us what you know about it, and I'll throw in what little tidbits I might know, and we'll see what we can come up with.
Sure. I think a lot of people, especially, you know, I'm an older millennial, and people younger are of the mindset that there's always been censorship in films. There's always been the double beds and the no swearing and more of an implied innuendo than flat out stuff. And I think it's really interesting to look at the pre-code Hollywood, because it might still be considered kind of tame by our 21st century standards, but so much more was on the table. And more grit, women in professions that were certainly ill repute or making their own money, or not necessarily kind of those forced happy endings.
Yeah, women would be in situations of, like, we have to be careful of YouTube, you know what we say, but women would be involved in the world's oldest profession out of necessity because of a hard scrabble upbringing, but it was not treated as a tragedy, or they did well. I think a perfect example, if not the time period of the attitude, would be Mae West. She was proudly who she was. You know, she didn't make any bones about it, no apologies. And there was a lot of that pre-code. People like Thelma Todd and Joan Blondell, and, you know, those really fairly early 20s into the 30s. Once the 30s hit, everything just, you know, got constrained. But so do you remember anything specific that comes to mind that would be a really good example? I can think of one thing, but I want to pick your brain.
And a good example of the pre-code thing? You know, I've always liked the 3 on a Match movie with Bette Davis is in that, and Dvorak. I never say her name right. And it kind of shows how these childhood friends and their lives all kind of diverge and go in different directions, and there's a lot of kind of violence, sadness. It's a short movie. I think that, you know, there was certainly a time of kind of some rapid fire production. You know, you can tell they're a little lower budget, shorter. And you know, again, there's maybe not today's standards of explicit, you know, sexual, you know, language or things like that, but there's a coarseness, I feel like, that there's a rough around the edges. It's not smoothed by the censorship office. Even like film noir, I know we're both big fans of that.
Yeah,
you're still a little moralistic, don't you feel like? You know,
what would the term be? There's a term that comes to mind. It'll come to me, but a kind of a raw earthiness to movies where they don't tiptoe around hard subjects.
Mhm.
People are shown to be the product of whatever struggle that they've had to go through in life, and they don't glorify the good and demonize the bad. People will, characters in the movies will often turn to lives of crime, and not huge gigantic crime, but just petty stuff to get by, and it's not treated like one of the seven deadly sins. They're not demonized. um
Sure.
and then of course the whole gangster thing. I think there was a reflection of what happened after World War One. It's easy to forget that right after the war was really also right after the Spanish flu. So there were these two parallel traumas that really affected people in a way that I was researching the Spanish flu a couple of years ago, and it is very difficult to find first person narratives about it. Almost impossible. The closest I could get was a book written by the military, keeping track of what happened on the different military forts, during the war, because it did spread initially that way for Americans. They put a group of soldiers on a troop ship to send them over to France. And when the ship arrived, everybody on the ship would be sick. And it was really devastating for young people. That was the prime group, the demographic that had the worst outcomes. So there was this trauma going into the 20s at the end of the war. All of a sudden, women had short hair, never before seen, so shocking, and skirts like at the knee. Oh my God. My mother had a friend. So my mother was born in 1930, and we're talking now about the late 50s. So she's in her mid to late 20s, right? And she had a friend who was in her late 50s, and they just hit it off. They were good friends. So this woman was an early college graduate for women. She went to Bryn Mawr, and she was from, I think, a wealthy family back east, from the main line or whatever. And she was a flapper. And I didn't realize that as a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old when I knew her. But looking back now, I remember being utterly fascinated by this funny little detail. She always wore her nylons, nylons. I don't know, I'm never sure.
Yeah.
She wore them. They weren't held up by garters, which would be, the conventional way to do it. She wore them rolled right to the knee with elastic holding them up. This was a very flapper-esque mode of wearing her nylons, her hose. And you can see it in these old movies from the 20s, most of which that early were silent, and it's so interesting to watch the confluence of a recovery from the war, a recovery from Spanish flu, and then prohibition. And at the same time, with the rise of prohibition was the rise of organized crime.
Sure.
So interesting to me. But the movie I was thinking of, I don't remember the name of the movie, but I remember the scene, and it's the infamous scene, pre-code Hollywood. Gloria Swanson in a pond swimming, and she's bare ass, she's completely naked. And you can see that she is. It's not absolutely explicit, but you can see. And it would never, ever, ever have been filmed for public consumption, maybe 5 years later. But it was right before the code. And of course, Gloria Swanson had her issues.
Yeah. Story.
Did you know that she was a frequent guest at Hyannisport?
Oh, yeah.
While the family was there?
Not.
I just find that remarkable.
Well, I think it was not a very secretive affair with
apparently not
father, No,
one wing of the house was the family, and then the friend.
Well, Joe Senior financed a lot of her Hollywood career and spent time out in the colony. And she always seemed like a very delightful person to me. I remember she was actually on an episode of What's My Line, and I think brought everyone a flower. I just kind of, that stuck out to me as just a very gracious lady who
Yeah,
was
thoughtful.
involved with
Yeah.
a really horrible man. But
Yeah.
wow.
No, am I correct in saying that she was the aging actress in the movie Sunset Boulevard?
Yeah. Yeah.
She
She's
actually kind of played herself,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's in her early 50s. I'm horrible with names, but I know the man who plays her butler was a famous director during the silent era, German, I believe. So I think he had some parallels too.
Was it the guy with the monocle? It wasn't Otto Preminger.
No, it's not Preminger, but it is a German name. Where he, certainly kind of her biggest fan. Actually, was
People are shouting at us right now.
yeah, but he too, I felt like, was kind of that bygone era as well. So in
Yeah.
terms of casting is what I mean.
Yeah. That was a great movie, but of course that was late 50s, right?
1950.
Late 50s.
1950. 1950. So
1950. Oh, early 50s. Okay.
Yeah.
It's all a blur. So we're talking about this code that was instigated because there was the rise of this thing called the Legion of Decency, which was a Catholic organization. It was very typical in human relationships that there's this cyclical things get crazy, things get tightened up, things get crazy, things get tightened up. So the flapper era, the woohoo on the tabletops with the bootleg liquor, and the machine gun guys hanging out of the old cars as they went around on two wheels, all that sort of stuff. There was a reaction against it. All the mainstream, no offense, middle American, middle class people were so offended by it. Hollywood was a hotbed of sin. And so they put big pressure on the studios, the Hollywood producers, the people with the money, right? Who feared boycotts. I think that's really what it boiled down to, right?
I mean, I think so much comes down to the bottom line that there must have been enough pressure to think that this had to change. I mean, I think it's kind of a lobby, if you will, to implement. I mean, and certainly even before Hollywood, stage actors were very much considered bottom of the barrel in terms
of the demi-monde.
So I think that extended a little bit into what you saw on screen, that these were not people to emulate or hero worship. They were not people to
Well, think about it. Vaudeville and acting troupes, and this goes back to the Middle Ages, but in the United States, the turn of the century, they would get on a train and they would head to all points in the country, and they do a stop a couple of nights, maybe even one night, get back on the train and go elsewhere. So you had genders in close contact 24/7, and not all of them with the benefit of the blessing of matrimony, if you know what I'm saying. And this shocked people. The people that were involved in the theatrical arts were less conventional. And there were always people who were less conventional, but the ones who were more conservative and buttoned up tend to make the most noise and have the most influence, right? So they started to put pressure on Hollywood to, have a code of behavior. You can't swear. You can't talk about illegitimacy or abortion or contraception or sex outside marriage. Anything sexual was off limits. But there were other things that surprised me. Let me see if I can find them in my notes.
Yeah.
Oh, profanity. You couldn't swear. I always thought that was so ridiculous. No nudity. So Gloria Swanson would have been in trouble. Oh, they were really upset by the violence. I think that comes up. It's a kind of a repeating theme, isn't it, even today?
Yeah. And yet I find a lot of the gangster movies, that Warner Brothers put out, after the code, I mean, there's still shootouts and maybe not terribly graphic. There's maybe not a ton of blood you really see in those.
Well, it wasn't Scarface.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes we'll see like, oh, someone's been shot and they just collapse on the ground and there's no
Although it
real
was
blood.
Scarface, the original Scarface,
Yeah.
went, back that far.
Yeah.
But the graphic depictions were
Yeah.
pretty tame by our standards.
I think so.
Oh, here's one that I thought was hilarious. I think you'll agree. Indecent dancing. Because in the 20s, there were a lot of these early movies that had the flappers who would get up on the table in the nightclub, like patrons, and get inebriated, get up on the table and dance, and was shocking because you could see their knees. Oh, another one, bad mouthing a religion.
Oh,
I thought that was bad mouthing police. They could not show police, law enforcement, in a bad light. And then they had the typical all-purpose term perversion. You can figure out what they were talking about there.
Yeah.
But also interracial relationships, which, we saw Dorothy Dandridge and Marilyn Monroe and Ava Gardner. Weren't they good pals, all three of them?
I mean, some people certainly rebelled against that kind of segregation. Sure.
Yeah, there were, there are always decent people, but they're not always the most vocal, and they're not always in the majority. And you're fighting an uphill battle against possibly your upbringing and family pressure, and a lot of things come into it. Not an excuse, just an explanation. And then those are all the forbidden things, as you can imagine, the forbidden things. But they also had the expectation. They wanted movies to encourage patriotism. And they were, as the article I read said, they were hyper Christian, hyper white, hyper racist, misogynist, and anti-Semitic, which is interesting because they encoded it all. And by 1934, the studios really had no choice. Now, William Hayes, how much do you know about him?
I mean, I know that he's who the code is named for. I mean, I know a few things there, but if you want to jump in with some.
He was a piece of work. He was the postmaster general. And he was given this job, which he took eagerly. He was a man of a lot of ambition. He was very small in stature, very slight, and often dismissed, but he had a gigantic ego and a gigantic ambition. And what's not necessarily popular knowledge is that he benefited so financially, personally, from this job that he went into it with great zeal, because as long as he kept this position, as long as the code stood, he was raking in the dough. He was given the use of a limousine. They paid for his travel. They paid for they being, I don't know. Oh, I do know. It was paid for by the studios, because here's what happened. The government started getting dragged into it by the Legion of Decency, and the studios saw the writing on the wall, and they didn't want the government controlling them. They figured if they could control the narrative themselves, that's where they wanted to be. So they arranged this the movie producers code group, I forget the name of it, and negotiated this guy Hayes being in charge of it. He delegated to a guy who was a zealot and who for 20 years was just terrible to people, and kept his thumb on the narrative that you saw in the theaters. But Hayes, meanwhile, was raking in the money and really personally benefiting from the whole thing.
Sure. Sounds about right. I mean, doesn't
of course
come down to money and power, I think, it seems to be a motivator so often.
Yeah. And the misogyny was really dramatic. I think we've talked before. I have not so much enthusiasm for movies in the 50s,
Sure.
late 40s, early 50s, because they're so gendered and so misogynistic. I really like the earlier 20s and early 30s because the women's roles tend to be stronger and less obsequious to the men. And that's one of the beauties of Barbara Stanwyck. I've been trying not to call her Barbara Streisand all morning. I've written it and said it several times. So forgive me if I miss.
Yeah, no.
So can you remember off the top of your head, I'm putting pressure on you because I don't remember, movies that she made pre-code that were drastically different?
Yeah, there was a movie, I think Babyface was 1934.
Yeah.
And she is, I don't know if you want to call it a call girl or, but certainly very explicit. It was like, I think the movie tagline was "She had it," and that's what people, and it was
That's what people wanted.
Yeah, and there's a very young John Wayne in the movie. He's shot out from Iowa. We claim him.
Oh, please.
We claim him. And in a very, very early role. I mean, you can tell he just kind of came in off the
Off
boat
the train.
Yeah, the train. Yeah.
Off the mail train.
Yeah. And I just, I love, there's Night Nurse too. I remember that from that.
Oh, I like that movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And, Barbara, I feel like she's someone who could play any role, and yet there's still that essence.
Yeah.
Yeah. The voice, the mannerisms. There's just she's so recognizable.
Yeah, just strong presence.
Strong presence. Yeah. So, and then you compare that to like Ball of Fire, which I think is a really cute movie from the early 40s. Same kind of, she's a burlesque dancer. She's obviously been around the block.
Okay, yeah, I remember that.
But,
yeah.
but it's tamed down. It's almost like a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs takeoff, living in the home with the other professor types and kind of trying to turn her into a bit of a
there has to be like a happy ending, and everybody has to end up either married, employed,
reformed. We reformed your bad ways. Maybe motherhood will help you to do that. And if it's just
always,
or certain people being killed at the end. If you're just beyond redemption, those are the people that were arrested or in a shootout.
Right.
At the end. Kind of this neat and tidy ending. So I think of those, and I think Babyface was actually considered one of the top few 5 to 10 movies that really pushed the code, into implementing that was just considered so against everything that the code was looking for, right?
I always think of her in the same vein as Joan Blondell. And I need to do some reading about this because I wonder why Joan Blondell sort of went out of favor. It's not that anything awful happened to my knowledge. Mm-hmm. It's just that she kind of went out of style, I guess. Maybe she leaned too heavily into the bleach blonde thing, and that did go out of style. And I don't believe that Barbara Stanwyck ever really embraced that kind of an image as much.
Well, and I had the impression it's been a few years, but I read kind of all the major books that were out on Barbara Stanwyck, that she was a bit more of a freelance, was not
totally independent,
kind of hire. And I think that is going to give you some professional distance when you don't have a certain studio's kind of 10 commandments you have to follow, right? Edicts. So I think that gave her an edge, and she was already so well established. I mean, a nobody going off on their own, that would have been probably a career ender to not have a backing, right? But I think this gave her a lot of creative control in her career, and I think not caring as much about all those roles.
That's what struck me the most. We had our little thing. Deborah and I did our thing about her, and the thing that impressed me the most about her was her autonomy and her sense of independence. She wasn't going to be bossed around by anybody, and she didn't care how much money you had or how much power you had. She had a lot of inner personal strength, and her childhood, her background was so painful.
Wow.
You know, we asked, do you remember what happened when your mother died? She was there. You know, her mother fell off the back of a tram car or something.
Yeah, trolley.
Was
Brooklyn.
pregnant.
Yeah.
And it killed her. Can you imagine? And the story that we got was that, yes, she remembered, and it did very much inform her childhood, teenage years, because she basically had to raise herself.
She did. And her father, I believe, had gone to Panama to help build the canal and did not return.
He came back in her adult years, but not while she was trying to struggle. And didn't one of her sisters take her under her wing? Am I confusing two actresses?
Yeah. And so Barbara was born Ruby Catherine Stevens, and then she had an older sister who I believe was a dancer. I mean, wasn't that what got her? Because I believe Barbara had a 7th grade education, so didn't go to high school.
She dropped out of school.
Dropped out of school. Had to, I'm sure, and she, I felt like, was an example of how Hollywood recruited from Broadway stage talent.
Right.
You know, that's how
the chorus girl who gets
to Hollywood starlet kind of set up. And I don't know if you want to go a lot into Barbara's politics. I mean, I certainly thought she was a Republican.
We asked. Right? It was very interesting.
And friends with Jane Wyman, one of the gals, right? But I bring it up because I have to say, even though I am pretty liberal and a Democrat, if there was ever someone who truly pulled herself up from bootstraps, and I could see having kind of a mentality of, well, I did it, you can too.
If I could do it, anybody can do it, right? It would
be Barbara Stanwyck. I mean, she never got anything handed to her.
Oh no.
And I could see how if you grew up with, I did it all by myself and then became the highest paid woman in America. I think that was by 1944. I could see her be like, yeah, we don't need this extra, welfare social programs. Just do it yourself. I give her a little bit of a free pass on some of those thoughts because she was so no nepotism. There wasn't daddy's money. There wasn't other things that people have.
She didn't marry some guy who helped her along. And all of her relationships, her male relationships, seemed to be virtually detrimental. They all had issues and problems, and it wasn't like she was using that to climb up and get an advantage. But I asked. Okay, so take this with a grain of salt. If you were alive today, what would you say about our situation today? Would you, how would you fall on the political spectrum? Oh my God. She was disgusted with what was going on and found it antithetical to, the purpose of the founding of the nation. And she just ranted and raved. So I think she might have surprised us. I think she, like you said, she was a product of her upbringing, and it colored her attitude towards other people. Don't whine to me. I've gotten, I've had a hard time. Yeah. There was something going back to her not going to school. I asked, you didn't have an education. How did you, because she was obviously a very intelligent person as an adult. She wasn't like a drooler or anything. And apparently it was not uncommon because of the economic times when she was a kid. There was not as much control over child labor and requiring people to go to school. The rules existed, but they were loose, and she wasn't all that unusual. And it was much easier to get a job without a high school education. And which was surprising to me. And she's total autodidact. She said she spent the rest of her life teaching herself, that she knew, that she had gaps in her knowledge, big ones. And so she taught herself, which I think is really admirable. Yeah. And what was the other thing that she said? Oh, when she was 15, she had an abortion. And so we asked, what was that like? Because you think back alley, right? And what I didn't realize, and she's so straight, is at that time, so what would this have been?
Yeah, she was born in 1907, I believe.
Okay, so 24? No, 7,
22.
17, 22, 24. 19, 22, 24. She was 15. She said it wasn't like it was even 15 or 20 years later. Back alleys, people dying, just terrible.
Well,
She said
sure.
there was a whole network
Mhm.
of midwife type women who you would just go to. It wasn't a gigantic, I don't know, it probably wasn't legal, but it wasn't butchery.
It wasn't. Yeah, it was not a criminalized offense.
I should have
Is
looked
that
at
kind
it.
of what you're driving at? That it
Well,
wasn't
they didn't pursue it the way they
pursued.
Yeah. And so in colonial times in the United States, it wasn't even against the law. And was a very similar situation to what she described. If you had an unwanted pregnancy, you went to the midwife, and women took care of it. And it was just done quietly.
Yeah,
And
it wasn't politicized.
correct. Which was an interesting. I hadn't realized that. That was very interesting. So she went on to be discovered and start making these movies, but she always managed to maintain her independence. So here's the other topic that I find really interesting, and it's not from prurient curiosity. It's as a reflection of how things are today and what we've had to go through to get to where we are today. We tend to forget about people in our historical past as being humans just like us, So she was bi, and we asked, is that true? You hear these rumors, and it's not like we don't care, but we just set the record straight. And there was a little bit of foot dragging. It was interesting. She kind of didn't want to talk about it. And I made the comment, times have changed. People are not the way they might have been then. Right. And I got some pushback. She says, what, have you read the paper? Have you looked at the news lately? Which is true. That's very true. But in general, I would say people are more accepting and enlightened. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I think we've come a long way and I think it didn't help when depictions of gay people were so negative, or think of cross-dressing, or have that be, portrayed as a crime. And, I think that's just loosened so much. It's just not kind of a non-issue for so many people.
Well, the code, we read the code,
Sure.
Perversion, and we all know what they were getting at. And the equating of homosexuality with other criminal type behaviors. Sure. I'm not saying homosexuality is a crime in their eyes, equating all these things under this lump title of perversion and then criminality. There, you could really tell there was this need for secrecy, and some might call it discretion, but it was a self-protective attitude.
Absolutely.
And she admitted a relationship with Joan Crawford, and people are really eager for us to talk about Joan Crawford, so I guess we're going to have to do that. And then also with her, was it her PR person?
Oh yeah, I think I remember that.
I have it written down. I went to all the trouble of trying to find these lists, and then now I'm ignoring them. Helen Ferguson.
That sounds right.
Was her name. It was called A Boston Marriage. Mm. So that's when, and it refers back to a time in the past, the olden days, when you might find two unmarried women living together. They would be called spinsters, and it's Boston marriage, right? Not to be confused what was called a lavender marriage,
sure.
which she also had, right?
Robert Taylor.
Robert Taylor, and then wasn't she married to Frank Fay?
Yeah, Frank
Fay?
Fay.
Boy?
Yeah.
Fay. Yeah.
That first. Yeah.
So that's what I was wanting to know. Would she have considered that a marriage of convenience, or was there a relationship there? And so we pretty much came to the answer that she was bi in a time when that wasn't even acknowledged as a thing, which speaks to the strength of her character, in my opinion, because she was unapologetically who she was when it was necessary to maintain privacy about her private life for the sake of her career. She did it, but she didn't let it stop her from living her life the way she wanted to live it, which I really respected. So she went on to do all these fabulous movies. I think I like her comedies. I mean, I love film noir, but I love her comedies. I love Christmas in Connecticut, and then The Lady Eve, was it?
Yeah.
The Lady Eve, yeah. Was it Preston Sturgis? Was it Henry Fonda? Was the
Sturgis was the director.
Right. He was very popular at that time, and I think she made some other movies with him, if I'm not
the Mad
mistaken.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
The Mad Miss Mountain. That's been a long time for me. But that's another one. I think she paired really well with Henry Fonda. I thought they had a really great chemistry.
Yeah. Who was in Christmas in Connecticut? Who was the guy in that movie?
Is it Frank Morgan? Is that him?
Which would be why I wouldn't remember, because he doesn't come to mind to me the way some do.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like
Robert Montgomery?
The love interest in that doesn't wow you.
It's unimportant.
Yeah, it's secondary. Yeah, it's very secondary to the story, and you can tell that was just thrown in to make it that holiday ending.
I just love that movie. I've had a lot of people get back in touch with me after we talked about it, saying, "Oh, it's my favorite Christmas movie." I can't believe I didn't even know about it. I'm ashamed to say, I love the movie that she made with, was it William Holden? He was very, very young. Golden Boy?
Yeah.
Was the violinist, right? And he became a boxer. I thought that was so well written. It was really poignant. It could have been maudlin, and it wasn't. And she really stood up for him in Hollywood when he was, first of all, she fought for him to get that job. They didn't want him to have the job, and she took him under her wing, and she taught him how to deliver the lines so that he would be kept in the role. But there was another moment later on when he was snubbed and she stood up for him. Do you remember that story? I don't remember it. I just know it happened.
When he was older?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she was quite older at that time.
Yeah. Well, he struggled with alcoholism, and I think it, obviously negatively affected his career. And she got an award, and I remember her honoring him.
Lifetime Achievement.
I think that's what it was, an Academy Award for Lifetime Achievement. She mentioned him.
Because I think she did not realize she was going to get it. She thought she was presenting it.
Okay. Yeah. I knew there was some weird little twist to the whole thing. Yeah. But she was a loyal friend.
Yeah.
Which is sad that has to be something remarkable that we have to actually say, oh, she was loyal, Frank. Can you believe that? But she was. How much do you know about like the end of her career when she was on that cowboy show?
The Big Valley.
Yeah, I never liked that.
I'm not a big Western person, but one thing I wanted to say about her, if you find it of interest, is, she let her hair go white, in her later years,
I guess she did. Yeah.
Thornbirds, gray, and then they really went white, like stark white. And I just always thought that was so admirable, because that was not the glamour girl image, to not keep your hair. That was a sign of aging, right? And I just always thought, that she just didn't care. I mean, I think there's so many women in Hollywood today. Think like, Andie MacDowell, who used to do the hair commercials for Clairol, and now she's, got the long gray hair. I mean, I think.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, Barbara really didn't seem to care. I mean, like, she's going gray, she's going white, and I think even in her kind of 30s and 40s, the gray was seeping through a little bit. But yeah, I loved seeing her in the 60s and 70s and beyond, 80s with the white hair, because I just felt like that was obviously a personal decision to not keep up with certain beauty standards.
Well, first of all, she wasn't beholden to the studios.
Yeah.
Who put a lot of pressure on and a lot of emphasis on youth. Really responsible for so many social problems for young women.
Yeah,
that.
I just thought she was always beautiful, even when she was Victoria Barkley on The Big Valley. Not much wrinkle. I mean, just very beautiful, still very youthful, but then the white hair. And I just thought, you do what you want to do. I liked that.
Well, we call that well preserved.
Yeah, like you redefine how you're going to do it. I liked that.
There's somebody today now. What's her name? Pamela Anderson.
Sure.
The big to do about her is she's not wearing makeup anymore. Well, that's kind of a lie, because she does wear makeup. She's just not putting it on with a trowel.
Yeah, it depends on, obviously in film she does, but just in her day-to-day life. And yeah, I have found her so interesting. I mean, I really have followed that.
Have you?
But like, yeah, she just seems so normal, and I feel like so much was put upon her to have a certain image on the Baywatch, and very objectified. And I think now that she's older, I think isn't she late 50s, something like that?
I don't know.
Where she's just like, I have wrinkles, I have gray in my hair, I don't feel like I have to wear a pound of makeup. I want to pursue the art of acting, and I think she does like flowers and canning and has a farm, and just, I don't know. I just feel like good for you to decide you're going to change the rules.
Be a normal person. She was in Baywatch. I never saw that. So I never saw.
I don't think it was aimed at us. We weren't the target.
I didn't have a TV when that was a big thing. I missed a whole chunk of television history, and that was one of the things I didn't say. What I did know about her is she was wasn't she married to a rock and roll guy?
Tommy Lee, and Kid Rock too. And those would be some of my least.
Whoa, wait.
Yeah,
she was married to Kid Rock.
It's hard to believe, because she is so, I think, so sweet and soft spoken, and I'm not a big fan of his. So
you could tell I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
Yeah,
wow.
No, I mean, she's obviously a complex character,
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Well, one of the disturbing things about it is isn't she in a relationship with Liam Neeson? And there's a lot of talk about, I heard this being discussed in a podcast peripherally. I was laughing. They were saying, they're characterizing this as, isn't it wonderful that they're in such an age appropriate relationship? I think he's 15 years older than she is.
I think he's early 70s, right? And she's, I want to say 56, something like that.
So when there's not a 30 years age gap, everybody is, they're so just weird.
Yeah, I hadn't heard too. I mean, I did see the new Naked Gun, and I did really like it. So I don't know how much of some of that was meant to kind of help promote the movie, or if they wanted to keep a more low profile, but I haven't really heard any real updates on them ever making it official. But I wish them well. I mean, I always liked Natasha Richardson, and I think Liam Neeson certainly is well within his rights to want to remarry or move on. I mean,
why not? Yeah, of course.
That was so long ago,
that long ago, of course.
If they're happy, I think that's great. I mean, I find it interesting, but only to so much of an extent.
Oh, it's just a little bit of gossip, because my life is so uneventful.
No, I just mean I wish them well. I just don't feel like people they don't want to be under a microscope. Like, I think it's cool to talk about it, but then they deserve to have their own autonomy.
Well, I support him. I don't really know very much about the movies that he's made, because I'm not into action. He's in action, right? Yeah. But he's Irish, and so I have to support him.
Oh yeah, of course.
And Liam is actually a family name in my family. So which is so funny because when I was a child, people would say, Liam, what kind of a name is that? Actually, what they would say is Lime. What kind of a name is
And now it's like one of the top baby names.
It's the top.
Yeah, at least top 5. Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. But anyway, back to the story of Barbara Stanwyck. How long did she do the Big Valley?
Ooh, put me on the spot. Ooh, you think like 6 or 7 seasons? Does that sound right?
Is it that much?
I mean, I feel like it was not a flash in the pan. You know, I think it was interesting because she obviously had the Barbara Stanwyck show. It seemed like so many.
Oh, she did?
Had a variety show, or, you know, they'd have guest stars. So there'd be a drama, or there'd be acts of, you know, comedy, or right.
It wasn't a talk show.
No, it was no. And so I feel like she transitioned well to television with her own act in that way. And then certainly the Big Valley, I think, helped her because it was a whole other demographic, right? A younger male, I would think, too, and people who probably followed her from her film career. So I think she survived television very well, where I don't think a lot of people did. Well,
she embraced it. A lot of it's so funny because there's a parallel here when before movies there was the stage, and when movies came out, a lot of people who performed on the stage turned their noses up at movies. They looked at, you know, as those rabble, you know, why would we want anything to do with that lower form of art? And eventually people who were in movies turned around and did the same thing with television. And the people who embraced television actually were very successful, who transitioned from movie making to television. Look at Alfred Hitchcock.
That's where it was going. Yeah.
I can't even think of anybody else, but, you know.
I feel like a lot of people had that hour-long variety show. I mean, I know Loretta Young had a show.
Oh, that's right.
Right. I just feel like there's so many. I mean, like, I feel like my parents are baby boomers. You know, when I got into the old Hollywood stars, they'd say, yes, I remember right before we'd take our afternoon nap, the Loretta Young show would come on. My mom, you know, would say, like, I remember Loretta Young being on TV. And I'm talking
Dean
about,
Martin.
You know, Dean Martin. Yeah. Older.
Dean Martin, yeah.
That's how they do the old, you know, the golden age stars was from their television, second acts. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a whole new audience.
Yeah. I wonder if we're going to someday look back. Well, I won't be around, but if someday people will look back on the transition from the screen to technology, you know, to devices, and talk about it in the same way.
Well, sure. I mean, think about, there's so many streaming services now. I mean, I think movie theaters are struggling. They always look very abandoned where I live.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, so, and I think you'll see a lot of the big stars. Like, one of my favorite people today is Nicole Kidman. And you see her so much on shows and movies that just are on streaming platforms.
Right.
Right. Even in the theater. And I think that used to be a little bit, I don't know what you want to say, 5-10 years ago. Oh, now you're doing TV work. Like, it's a step down to go from movies to TV. And now it's like, well, this is where the money is. This is where your audience is. Maybe do both still. Sure. You could have a blockbuster coming out at Christmas in the theaters. Cool. But Paramount Plus and Hulu and HBO, and that's where you're going to have your show.
Well, maybe not so much Hulu anymore or Disney anymore.
Yeah. But I mean, I think almost everyone has at least one of those subscriptions.
Yeah.
That they're seeing stuff on. And so maybe that is the next hierarchy of, oh, you're still doing the theaters. Well, how much is...
That's right. You know, it's funny too, because I'm thinking of, I was just, while you were talking, I was trying to think of shows that I could translate in that way. And one of my favorite shows is Dateline. And one of the big hosts of Dateline is Josh Mankiewicz, and his brother is Ben Mankiewicz of Turner Classic Movies. And they're both from the Mankiewicz family. Was it their grandfather or their uncle, Henry Mankiewicz?
And then there's Joe Mankiewicz, who was he's behind All About Eve. he was the director of that. So
Yeah, and they made the whole family made the transition, from movies to the smaller screen. But I was also thinking not so much about streaming, although you're absolutely right, and I totally agree with you. I just wasn't thinking of it. I was thinking of all the people that have ended up being what they call influencers now. I don't know. I myself don't know who they are, but I hear tell
Sure.
that there's this whole sort of subculture of younger people who have taken on the world of entertainment in a smaller screen, in a smaller format. So like TikTok and and YouTube, and they've actually, in some cases, been very influential. So
Well,
you wonder what the next iteration of that is going to be, or, and I hate to ask this question, it terrifies me. Do you think they'll just take over with AI and they'll just be making fake stuff?
I do think AI is a problem. I mean, certainly, me being a journalist and author, I think about that a lot because you're wondering about being replaced or editing. Certainly there are people who just want to run something through a program or generate content. And I don't know, I just always hope that human touch doesn't go away of interactions. Like when I interview someone, I think I can do a better job than a machine can. Because I have life experience.
Yeah. I think that people will be replaced by AI. However, I do think there will always be a small subculture of people like you and like me who reject that. I'm a big believer. I've had friends who are teachers, professors, in colleges, and they moan about their students handing in work that they didn't do. It's obviously AI.
Mhm.
And how do you give a test to somebody that is in that situation? And I'm a big believer in you have them come in, and without access to books or paper, you sit them down and you say, okay, you've got an hour to answer this prompt, write an essay, and have it come from here.
I know. When I was in college, I mean, it would be stapled, but here's a bunch of paper and a pen, and here are outline this and tell us everything you remember about the March on Selma, and go.
Go. And the clock is running, so you.
But I love like that was perfect for me. I was not a fill in the blank or fill in the dot.
Oh, we have so much in common. I hate matching and fill in the blank. I love essay tests. Love them.
I'm more essay. If I could go off topic for 1 second, that there is a profession I feel like just from being a journalist I've talked to that actually I don't think is going to go away, and it is the court stenographers. I have talked to a lot of them are ladies. They have a whole association, kind of a whole union of the people that they have those special machines, right? And they are typing a mile a minute. They know all the codes, abbreviations. I think that is something to really encourage if people to go into that field. It pays very well. I just, that's something I don't think AI has taken over yet. It just seems to be the highest quality of court transcriptions are the people who are still using those machines.
I don't understand, because I would never have. I hear what you're saying, but I would never have predicted that, because don't they just record it? I mean, don't they have just video and audio recording?
It's just and it's been a few years since I've talked to them in the field, but it is just such a finely run system that a computer cannot do it. And the way that it is, I mean, these are very highly skilled people. There's a special education to become a stenographer. I was just happy to see that it's a growing field. I think, I don't know if you want to call it a union, but they're very strongly represented. It's growing. There's a need for it. I just thought that was some hope in the AI world, that people those little machines and the codes, and they know how to do it, and the accuracy, and some of them also moonlight as what would you call closed caption television, the people who are doing some of them do work in both, especially for live television. They're typing very, very quickly to get I don't know, that's kind of an aside, but I was kind of hopeful in hearing that something that seems so archaic is actually still the preferred mode.
Yeah, would never have occurred to me.
Transcription.
Yeah, yeah.
I just felt like that was a bright spot in knowing that a real person is actually doing the preferred level of accuracy in the job, and it's a growing field. So I felt like that was a happy thing to learn.
Yeah, it is. And, and I think this is an important conversation. I don't think either one of us is really a Luddite, but I think that there's a place for AI. Absolutely. I have friends who are in water conservation lawyer, for example, who uses a ton of AI to collate data.
Sure.
Otherwise, they, be drowning in the paperwork, right? That's a legitimate use of it. And there are other uses. They use AI to analyze imaging, medical imaging.
Sure. That's wonderful.
I think that's a valid way to use it. I don't think that's a substitute for people, but it's an augmentation, right? Researchers, I think, will benefit dramatically from it, but there's that human element, and if we lose that, there's a loss of creativity. And I don't know about you, but when I write something, it does something to my brain. It does something that I get, it sounds so weird. I get pleasure from the process, and that's kind of a large part of the motivation to even bother to do it, is because there's an enjoyment in the doing of it, the creative process.
Yeah. I totally get it.
You might end up with a cheaper, quicker end result using computers or artificial intelligence. But what are you denying the people who are the creative people?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think if it feels a little sketchy to you, then I think you've done too much with the AI. I mean, if if you hit Google for some, that's artificial intelligence.
I know.
I feel like if you're like, okay, I just want to get some thoughts together, great. But if you're like, oh, I'm going to feed this in and have something pop up, if you kind of have that feeling in your gut that what you're doing is a little floating on the line, then I think you've already answered your own question about.
Well, I'll give you an example of an antique AI, a similarity. There is an encyclopedia, the World Book Encyclopedia, and the format of it is really very interesting. It's well thought out. So let's say you're looking up, I don't know, whales, and the first paragraph is a very, very basic description of a whale in general, and it's geared towards third grade-ish level, so it would grab somebody with that ability and comprehension. And as you go down through the entry in the encyclopedia, it becomes more sophisticated. And at the end of most entries, not all, but most entries, they have an outline that's geared towards late high school, early college. And the outline is, here are your thoughts organized in a sort of a skeletal form, but now you take it and run with it, and so it's providing you with an element of organization. And I think when you Google something and AI pops up, that's all you're getting. You're getting the bare bones organization. And if you depend on that for your knowledge, you have a very superficial knowledge that you really need to pursue these things beyond that basic structure.
Sure. When I think some people, we know people have different learning styles. I could see someone saying, I need that kind of that skeleton of information to then know what to do with my thoughts. So I'm certainly sympathetic to that someone is struggling.
Sure.
Or how a tutor might come in, or if you were in a classroom for some extra assistance and getting that help in school. I mean, I think that's certainly okay. It's maybe just kind of making money off of this effort could be a different level than just, hey, I need to get my thoughts organized, how I'm thinking, my brain works. I know as a writer, a lot of my writer friends will say the hardest thing to write is a synopsis. You've written the book, what is it about? And they just struggle with dancing. So I could see feeding stuff about your book into AI, and here's a paragraph synopsis to put on the back cover of your book or the Amazon description. I could see that because I know that's something some of us do struggle with, taking all that's in our head and whittling that down. So it's your work. It's just saying, how can I present that to the average person and make it understandable?
Now, I agree with you to a point. So far, I agree with what you said as it's being valuable to certain people, learning styles, et cetera, organizing your thoughts, et cetera.
Yeah.
I really resent what YouTube is doing right now, which is using AI to you look at this video when we're done. They don't do it for every single video, but underneath the video, you'll see a little AI. What is this video about? And they do a synopsis. What did this mean? You know, like they're speaking for the person who created the video.
Oh, yeah, I don't like that.
Without permission. I mean, I'll speak for myself. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I don't like that.
Or take some of the guesswork out of, is this video worth watching? Here's the footnotes aspect of.
And think about what that removes from your appreciation is you're not getting the style of the delivery, the nuance, the body language, you know, all of that stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's lacking in warmth. I mean, it's kind of a cold, straightforward.
Yeah. Well, I often say there's no humor in the algorithm. Anyway, back to Barbara Stanwyck. I wonder what she would think of all of this. Probably embrace it and use it to her advantage.
Well, I mean, you know, she was such a hard worker. I mean, she did so much on her own. I mean, you know, she did her own stunts, and that was a big part of her career, the horse riding and the
I didn't realize that. That's great.
Yeah, she'd do all her own stunts with the westerns, and she did a lot of western movies too, even before Big Valley. So I don't know. I think if she felt like it helped the greater good, but if it was someone taking a shortcut, it was not a shortcut kind of person.
No.
So I don't think she from that standpoint.
She appreciated personal effort.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, you know, she was not a complainer. She was not a bad mouther. She was just very professional all the time.
And, you know, she had a reputation as being a bit of a kind of a hard-boiled dame. But in reality, when it came to working with her on a daily basis, she was beloved by the regular people, the crew, the lighting, the makeup, the costume people, because she wasn't a snob. She didn't think she was better than anybody else.
No.
She knew where she came from, you know, and she was respectful of other people and not this hierarchical, egotistical nonsense that goes on in a lot of movie making. Yeah. She was very beloved by the people that she worked with for decades. And that says a lot about somebody, because I do think that Hollywood is given to gossip and backbiting and, you know, narcissism. And she never fell prey to the negative results of her behavior because she wasn't behaving negatively towards others. So respect her for that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I don't know. Let's see if we missed anything important here. Oh, one little thing. The original movie, The Star is Born.
Yeah.
Rumor has it that the dialogue in there was a reflection of her relationship with her husband. That people, and I asked about that, and she said,
No.
So, which just shows you the gossip that.
Oh yeah, trying to sort that through is difficult.
Yeah. Well, I think we've exhausted poor Barbara.
I mean, she's a favorite. You know, I know we didn't touch a lot on her family. You know, she had an adopted son. I think his name was Leon. It certainly didn't seem like motherhood was a big calling for her. No. And it makes you wonder if that was just kind of the pressure of the time to do that, because it certainly did not seem like they had much of a relationship. You know, and he kind of grew up. I think it sounded a little embittered, and I'm sympathetic to that, honestly. He wasn't, you know, he didn't choose to be adopted, certainly. So, yeah, I don't know. And of course, I know we talked about her being bisexual, and I think that's certainly a possibility. I don't know. I felt like Robert Taylor seems so important to her. Do you think that has been exaggerated through the years, that he was some great love?
I'm trying to remember. Well, no, I think that they, if I remember correctly, they just sort of grew apart, and he was important, but he was important in a period of time, and then they grew apart. I think the more uncommon relationship that I really neglected to ask about was Robert Wagner.
Yes, I remember that, and I have to say he's not one of my favorite people, with the Natalie Wood stuff.
I know.
I'm certainly about the mindset that he was involved in her death. So I mean, to me, I'm kind of biased with Robert Wagner. I have to say, just because to me that's such a huge thing to try to overlook.
Oh, there are a lot of Hollywood figures that I would say that I was biased against. You mentioned John Wayne.
Yeah, I'm sure he's not one of your favorites. If I know.
Oh my God, I can't. I just can't. When you were talking about her son, a thought came to mind. I would call that performative motherhood. I think that was prevalent in Hollywood, right?
Well, we remember Ian Baxter saying, "Yeah, I had kids. Everyone was having kids, and then I went and did a movie, and
that's right.
Wherever they were, that's where they were." I mean, not necessarily abusive or neglectful, but not very present. A lot of emotional development.
Well, women had no choice to a certain extent. You couldn't be an actor and just be an actor because you were a woman. You had to have a family as well, or there was something not quite womanly about you. You were neglecting to fulfill your God-given role. And a lot of them were pressured into marriage and relationships. And I don't know if they were pressured into motherhood. I think that would have been a little hard to orchestrate. But a lot of them adopted children, which I think is interesting. They didn't want to be pregnant.
I think
because it screwed up your appearance,
Yeah, and of course, appearance, your time, body, and then I think for some people there was infertility from the abortions too. I mean, I think that was the case for some people.
Yeah.
As well.
Well, I think I know who we're going to do next. I'll talk to you about it. Make it a surprise. I'll talk to you about
fun.
So this has been so much fun. We could just talk all day long about
I always like
movies.
talking to you.
I enjoy you too, Sarah, and I enjoy especially the topic of movies because it's a rich field for gossip and discussion. Nothing like a little gossip to brighten your day, right?
I love it.
Oh, okay, good. It makes me feel better. I've always had trouble with people who just don't like gossip because there's something unseemly about gossip. I thrive on it, so nothing malicious, just entertaining. No. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for everybody who watched. And we certainly will take suggestions. If you have people you want us to look into. I have an idea, so we'll see how it goes. Thank you. Slungafoil. Sluncha.